Hello everyone, welcome back to additional HOA Reddit tales. Picture waking up to discover a homeowner association violation in your postbox when you aren't even a part of the HOA. Then, the HOA president stomps onto your lawn, demands to see your identification, and threatens to kick you out of the house you own outright. Let's jump straight into this homeowner association narrative. And the first one begins like this. I reside in an older section of the city that has existed for decades. I have always maintained excellent relations with my neighbors on my side of the road. However, in the newer development across the street, they established a homeowner association about 5 years ago. The older side of the street did not participate in that, which was perfectly fine by me. The new section possesses certain shared amenities. Therefore, I felt it was logical for them to have their association so that specific regulations could be set regarding shared areas like their community garden, private park, and outdoor swimming pool. So, I recently chose to undertake a few projects to enhance my life now that I am semi-retired. I established a vegetable garden in my front yard. My front door also required a fresh coat of paint, and I selected sunshine yellow. It is a vibrant hue that I find incredibly cheerful. And since I do not belong to the HOA, I am not required to adhere to rules regarding these matters. I am free to act independently regarding how I like things. However, the president of the HOA across the street started behaving strangely after she noticed the modifications. One day, roughly a week after I had painted the door and planted the garden, Karen came up to me. I demand that you repaint the door a respectable shade like white or brown, stated Karen. And remove that mess in your front yard. First of all, I replied, good morning. Secondly, you cannot simply walk onto my property and dictate my actions. Yes, I can, insisted Karen. As president, it is my right to tell tenants what to do. I am not a tenant, I clarified. I own my home. Homeowner, tenant, it's the same difference, said Karen. No, it is not, I retorted. I am an English teacher, and I can assure you with certainty that a tenant and a homeowner are not the same thing at all. My house is paid off. I do not pay monthly rent, and I am also not a member of your Homeowners Association, thus, I am not under your control in any way. The Homeowner Association has control over this entire street, claimed Karen. Well, not this sector, I answered. I recommend that you examine your paperwork if you disagree with me because I do not pay dues to you. Well, then perhaps you are in violation for that, snapped back Karen. I could perceive she was furious that I had contradicted her. But I was within my rights, and I stood my ground. I'll be back, threatened Karen. I returned to my task of watering the garden to ensure my tomato and pepper plants would get a healthy start. But the following morning, I discovered a written violation in my mailbox, declaring that I was in trouble with the HOA. I simply placed it in a drawer and went off to work. I was not concerned about it. I didn't belong to the HOA and didn't need to comply. Having a yellow door might not align with the HOA, but it was entirely legal and compliant where I lived. However, that afternoon, as I was exiting my vehicle, Karen approached me once more. Did you get your notice? She inquired. I did, I answered. But you cannot issue me a notice for something I am not part of. If you don't take this seriously, you could face fines or eviction from your home. Consider the notice your final warning. Don't you have more important things to do than harass people? I asked. I am just enforcing the regulations, stated Karen. It isn't anything you need to get happy about. You came over here threatening my home, I said, and you did it as casually as if you were ordering a cup of coffee and a slice of pie at the shop around the corner. This is my residence. I have lived here for over 20 years, and I have never had any issues. Your HOA has existed for 5 years, and I have never had any trouble until now. So, why at this moment? I don't know how they used to operate in this neighborhood, said Karen. And frankly, I really don't care. But I am in charge now, and I intend to run things in total compliance with the regulations for everything. Don't you have a job? I asked. When are you going to find time for all of this? How about just living and letting people live unless it is something critical? "You don't need to worry about whether or not I work," snapped Karen. "Just paint your door a standard color and remove your garden before I arrange for someone to do it for you and send you the bill." "You cannot do that," I replied. I had been attempting to remain calm with Karen up to this point, just as I would in a classroom full of students. But now it was the end of the workday. I was fatigued. I was hungry. And Karen was being entirely unreasonable by threatening me. So I spoke to her in a raised voice. "If you or anyone else comes onto my property without my permission again, it is trespassing. I wish to be left alone, and the same applies to the door and the garden." "I want to see your ID," demanded Karen. "For what reason?" I asked. "To verify if you are who you claim to be and if you genuinely own this property. You might just be a drifter or a homeless beggar." "I can show you the deeds if you wish," I said, "but I am not repainting my door or removing my garden. I don't want to see your deeds. I will look you up in the HOA registry myself." "Well, good luck with that," I said, "because I am not a member." I displayed my driver's license and then requested her to leave. In the days that ensued, Karen did everything she could to make my life a living hell. In addition to her threats during her visits, she left notices with absurd amounts for fines in my mailbox. She also posted a document in the mailbox regarding a lien on my property, claiming there were unpaid HOA dues and that they could seize my property even though I never joined the HOA as a member. I knew that I owned my home and that I did not need to pay whatever she was claiming. However, I also realized that ignoring the issue was not going to make it vanish. I began recording every document I received in my mailbox. And every time Karen came over and spoke to me, she had started standing on the sidewalk, actually, and yelling at me about the door, the garden, and the mail she had sent. I continued to tell her to leave me alone and to cease threatening me. I reiterated that I was not a member of the HOA and that whatever her sources were regarding the ownership of my home, she had been misinformed. I decided to send a letter back to the HOA and put all of this in writing. I also photocopied the deed to my home and the relevant financial documentation proving it was paid for in full and that there were no creditors involved in my file whatsoever. I also located news articles online regarding the inception of the HOA and that my sector had not been named in the founding documents. However, I received a letter back from Karen stating that my deed was fraudulent and reiterating that the garden must be removed, the door painted a proper color, and that I pay retroactive fees to the HOA because my home was indeed supposed to be part of the association. She claimed that whoever had gone around looking after the memberships had obviously made a mistake. And I would say, guys, the error here is Karen. However, if you enjoy these HOA stories, please don't forget to like the video because it would help me tremendously. Either way, I spoke to a few of my neighbors who were also residing in the older sector, and they confirmed they were also non-HOA members. I did not mention these conversations to Karen as I didn't want to make my neighbors targets for her. I wrote back to the HOA stating that I refused to pay the retroactive fees and that if they didn't stop, I would be contacting the police to press charges for harassment. I did not want to have to take that route, but they needed to know it might be necessary. I hoped that by stating it in writing, it would demonstrate to the HOA that I was serious. I was also wondering where the other members of the HOA were because Karen was the only one I ever had any interactions with. Next, I began to receive notices and fines via certified mail. So, I had to sign when I received a letter, and each letter contained a different fine. They ranged from $2,500 all the way up to $5,000. Anonymous posts with photos and gossip about me began to appear on social media pages for my community. I could not prove who had created them, but I suspected Karen was behind it. I wrote on the community groups asking the administrators to please remove the posts. However, they remained up. I wondered how that could be allowed. I began to get false notices by mail. They got worse over time, too. False code violations and a threat of a lien against my home. I began to feel physically ill from the situation. And it didn't matter how many times I wrote back to the HOA, even sending my own certified letters. The threats and intimidation just kept arriving. By the time a month had passed, I knew that Karen was relentless and would not stop until I either did what she wanted and paid all the fines and fees, or I moved. And I knew moving would not be a real solution here. For one, I loved my home. And secondly, anyone who bought the place would be faced with dealing with Karen, and they wouldn't have the history regarding the neighborhood that I possessed. So, I gathered all my documents and scheduled an appointment with a real estate lawyer. At this point, I had had enough. She doesn't have any authority, stated the lawyer. I will draft a cease and desist letter stating as much and asking her to stop the harassment. Hopefully, once she sees that you have legal counsel, she will stop all of this. I hope so, I replied. This is all too much for me to try and cope with. Karen is relentless, and I don't know what to do anymore. Don't hesitate to contact me again if you need to, said the lawyer. You have plenty of evidence to build your case against her if it comes to that. Karen came to see me after she received the letter. She remained on the sidewalk and just shouted at me. The HOA attorney says that I have jurisdiction. Then I guess I will see you in court, I said, and I meant it. I told my lawyer what Karen had said, and she sent a letter requesting the contact info of the HOA lawyer. She hoped that we would be able to keep things out of court if the two attorneys could speak and sort things out. I hoped so too, but in the meantime, I received a notice of a lien against my property for the amount of $8,000. I went back to my lawyer. Now what? I asked. This is a fraudulent lien, said my lawyer. We are not just talking about harassment now. We are in actionable legal territory. We filed a lawsuit against Karen personally and the HOA for harassment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and filing fraudulent liens. She also filed for an emergency motion to have the fraudulent lien expunged. And the answer did not take too long. The HOA was stunned to learn the truth because it seemed that Karen had not been honest with them about many things, including her knowledge of the rules. They removed her as president and board member and asked if they could settle with me. The case with Karen went to court, and she ended up having to pay me over $20,000. A permanent injunction was also filed against Karen, preventing her from ever being able to contact me again. The false online info was also taken down. The county records had clearly documented that my property was not part of the HOA. With Karen's reputation ruined, she eventually sold her home and departed the neighborhood. And the next one is a malicious compliance story that you don't want to miss. It is titled, Ghosting and Loving It. So recently, my company introduced a new process for supplying customers with expensive consumables. Previously, this process involved a significant amount of direct communication, numerous emails, and face-to-face meetings with customers to comprehend their needs. However, while I was on PTO, everything changed. Without any notice or consultation, a completely new system was implemented. My team, which used to handle about 65% of the previous process, had no involvement whatsoever in designing or approving this new method. Now, instead of collaborating directly with customers and colleagues, I have been given a standardized form divided into 4 sections, one for me, one for sales, one for logistics, and one for territory assistants and managers. My section of the form is minimal. All I do is indicate how many boxes to supply. Critical details such as who the customer is, where the order is going, pricing adjustments, and preferential rates, information I use to manage, are no longer included. To make things worse, customer details on the forms are often incorrect. I used to fix those errors in the system, but I no longer have permission to do so. So, that is now handled by the head office. Even though I know my customer base well and try to provide accurate updates, my emails now bounce back. When I raised these issues, I was simply told to follow the form and not deviate. So, I did. I completed my section, sent it to the designated address, and moved on. Nothing happened until months later when a customer called to say that they were running critically low on consumables. I escalated the issue to my manager, but by that point, I had already submitted 24 forms without any feedback or visible results. Recently, while I've been off recovering from surgery, I received an email asking for the same data I used to provide under the old system. I have chosen not to respond. That information is scattered across old emails and records, and it's no longer my responsibility. Ironically, Though, the new process that was supposed to reduce costs and simplify operations has left 3 department heads confused and unable to proceed. They don't know the customer names, product details, we have 197 different products, or the order history, only the number of boxes. The system they rely on cannot function without accurate data input. And since I am now strictly adhering to the form as instructed, that data is not being entered anymore. In short, the new process has stripped away the practical knowledge and collaboration that once made the system work. It is now inefficient, confusing, and ultimately counterproductive. And the next one is a petty revenge story. It is titled, "I'm Sorry, Who Are You?" For some context, I am a 20-year-old female who has been bullied all my life and have been in recovery for a multitude of issues for the past year or so. I attend university in the same city I grew up in. So there is a high chance of me encountering people who went to previous schools or who bullied me. I was well known for being short-tempered and easy to wind up when I was younger. What happened? I was in the pharmacy waiting to pick up my prescription when someone shouted something at me. I pretended not to hear them, and they shouted again. They ended up getting frustrated, tugging on my arm. I turned around and immediately recognized who it was. It was a guy, 20 male, who had bullied me for over 10 years. So rather than get angry, I thought I would mess with him and see what happens. Him, "Hey, I heard you were in the local university." Me, "I'm sorry, but I don't know who you are. Do I know you from somewhere?" Immediately, he deflated. It was delightful to see, and I had to stop myself from smiling. Him, "It is me, his name, from school. Come on, you know me." Me, with a confused face, acting 100%, "I'm really sorry, but I don't know you. Did we go swimming together perhaps?" Him, "No, I don't think so." Me, "I'm really sorry, but I just don't know who you are. I think you should go to the back of the line, sir." I went on my phone and just blocked him out. He looked lost and eventually went to the back of the line. I got my prescription, ignored him, went to my car, and drove off. I literally screamed for joy and also because I was about to break down. It was a wonderful feeling to see him like that and to feel like he had nothing against me, to make him feel like he hadn't had a large effect on my life. Either way, the next one is a malicious compliance story. And if you have enjoyed this story so far, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel because we are getting close to 130,000 subscribers. Thank you so much. I love malicious compliance. Our neighbor reported our old but sturdy shed to the city for being too large without a permit. The inspector comes out, measures, but nope. The shed is well under the size limits and does not need a permit. Their husband then starts asking questions about the rules and gets all the specifics on what is allowed. The shed is old and very basic. Why not have a bigger, better shed? Oh, and by the way, the inspector knows the neighbor. She used to work in the planning department, knows the rules, and clearly was just trying to make trouble. He looks into her property and says that he can see a good half-dozen issues if we would like to report them. We laugh, but nah, we are going to go the malicious compliance route. We rip down the shed, hoping the neighbor is smugly gloating to herself. We then do nothing for 3 weeks, well, except draw plans, buy material, lay the foundation, and line up a couple of construction friends to help. Then one Saturday, our glorious big new shed goes up. Now, we hadn't heard from this neighbor in the 3 weeks, but now she is asking about our new shed. She would love to see inside if we don't mind. And we did. Cue another inspection notice for building a granny flat, the shed, on our property. And obviously, the inspection goes fine. Well, except for those violations on the neighbor's property. That unpermitted open fire pit built right against the retaining wall and fence is a concern, and we don't want it burning down our new shed. She has got a couple of guys out there right now, breaking up concrete. I think I'll go offer them some cold drinks from the mini fridge in the new shed. And the next one is a pond drama story. This happened some years ago. I bought 4 acres and a house out in the country. The neighbor in this story has about 6 acres. The people I had bought the property from put in a small pond several years before. And when they did, part of the raised ground surrounding the water went over the neighbor's property line by maybe 5 to 10 feet. I did not know about the property line issues when I bought the place. About a year after I moved in, my neighbors decided to throw a fit about the property line. So, they claimed the previous owners had promised to move the raised area, and if I did not move it, they would. Plus, they would take me to court about it. After going back and forth about it, with them threatening lawyers and coming to my work to argue about it, I told them I would move it. So then I contacted a guy with a small bulldozer and told him that I wanted him to reshape the pond. It was summertime by then, and the pond had mostly dried out as it was shallow. I wanted it deeper and to move the dirt on the neighbor's side inward by a few feet. Now, for the malicious compliance, making the pond deeper and moving the dirt wall meant that I now had a lot of extra dirt that needed to go somewhere. I told him, pile that dirt up along the neighbor's property line as long and as high as you can make it so that it blocks the view between our two properties. Which he did. The new dirt wall between my neighbor and me stretches from the pond to most of the way down the property line and is about 10 foot tall. My neighbor was pissed, but there wasn't anything he could do. There's a ruling that says no structures on the property line, but dirt is not a structure. He tried to get the local neighborhood board involved, but I just ignored their letter offering to move the dirt for free as they did not have a case and I liked having the dirt wall between us. And yeah, guys, I guess that is how you get malicious compliance, revenge on someone with a simple dirt wall. And by the way, Ripe Stars, if you ever had any interesting disputes with your neighbors, then feel free to please post them either here in the comments on Reddit at r/Ripe Stories or send them to my email at ripeidiot@gmail.com. Thank you so much in advance. I would love to read your story. And now, let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. If any of you, like me, live in the UK, you will know how hot our summers can get. Well, let's be honest, they don't get that hot. We are just not used to the heat, and our houses are not equipped for keeping heat out. You will also know that pools are uncommon here. And the next best thing is a homemade slip and slide or a paddling pool that can fit no more than 2 toddlers. So, yes, I know that the heat is usually an issue, but I would never have thought anyone would go to the lengths my neighbor did to cool down. I'm calling her my neighbor for the sake of this story, but in reality, she lives about a 5-minute drive away from me, all the way down at the bottom of the town. I was fortunate enough to inherit a lovely property from my late grandfather. It's a quaint little rural property at the top of a town in the north of Wales. The land stretches for a good few acres, and the house itself is set atop a small hill that stretches all the way to a small river near the bottom. It is a lavish property to say the very least, and in this economy, I am very lucky to own it. I have done my own refurbishments over the years, the main one being adding an outdoor pool next to my house. It took a lot of money and time, but once it had been done, it added nearly 100k to the property value. In the winter, it's not much use, of course, but in the summer, it really is a blessing. So, that takes us to the start of this story. When it was the first few weeks of July and the air was heating up, a woman knocked on my door. "Hello. Would you mind if we used your pool?" a woman asked as I opened the door. She gave me a sweet smile, and I would have said yes if it were not for 6 children standing behind her, all of whom looked to be full of cold. "I'm sorry." "No," I replied and began to shut the door. "Why not? What on earth is the issue?" The woman put her foot out to stop the door from closing. "You have 6 kids with you. Kids make messes, and they all look ill. These are my kids, and I can promise you they don't make any mess, nor are they ill." "Well, they certainly look ill. It's just a bit of a summer cold. Everyone gets it. I'm sure you will cope. Look, I'm sorry, but you cannot use my pool." She stared at me for a moment as if thinking I would cave and just let her use it if she stared long enough. "Why don't you go to the public pool? It's half a mile south of town," I suggested, to which her face scrunched up. "We cannot use a public pool. Think of all the germs that are just swimming around in there." She flailed her hands to emphasize this point. "So, germs are a problem for you, but they shouldn't be for me," I asked with a smirk, knowing I had caught her in a knot. She stumbled over her next words before turning around and stomping off to her car with the kids following. I stupidly thought that would be the end of that woman, but alas, the next day she was back, and this time she had another woman with her and her kids once again. "Hey, my sister is saying you won't let her use this pool." "But I think that cannot be right, because who would deny someone such a small request?" the second woman asked, batting her eyelashes. If it were not for the persistence and rudeness of the last woman, I probably would not have minded them using the pool. But hey, they were just being ridiculous now. "It's my pool. You're not entitled to be able to use it," I replied, seething as I crossed my arms. "That's ridiculous. We came all this way, and now we cannot use this pool," the original woman asked again. "It's my pool, so no. At least we asked. We could have just jumped in." "Gosh, how can you be so harsh? You know what? I think we all got off on the wrong foot. I'm Julie. I live at the bottom of the town near the shops. Me and my family don't have the luxury to have such a pool, and as you know, it has been roasting this time of year. Would there be any way we could use your pool for as little as 10 minutes? Julie, the original woman, asked. "I'm Sam, and you know what? Sure, as long as you promise to clean up after yourselves. And this is a one-time thing." "Okay, thank you," Julie screeched, and the 2 women and 6 kids ran off and jumped straight into the pool. They had come wearing their swimming suits. I sighed, annoyed that I ended up caving to their wishes, and went inside. Half an hour later, I could still hear them outside, but they were not being too loud. So I just let them stay. I remember falling asleep and waking up to silence, and looking outside, I saw that they had gone. But had they cleaned up after themselves? Of course not. There were food wrappers all over the place. The deck chairs were in different positions, and some of the flowers I had planted near the pond had been trampled on. So, wow. This is what I get for graciously allowing them to use my pool. I cried angrily as I cleared up the mess, muttering to myself as I did so, "They better not come around again, or I swear." Unless they did the following day. "Hi Sam, I know you said it was a one-time thing, but could we perhaps use your pool again?" Julie asked. She had her children with her again, plus a few other friends. "No, you left my pool area in an absolute state the other day. I might have agreed otherwise. Listen, you know how kids are. You said your kids don't make a mess, and I thought even if they did, you would have the common courtesy to clean up after them anyway." The woman looked between her friends, all of their expressions unreadable, but I learned later exactly what they were silently plotting. "You're right. We should have cleaned up. And it was rude of us to come asking again. Good day." And with that, off they went. At 2 o'clock in the morning that night, I woke up to the sound of loud music playing outside. Alarmed, knowing I live quite isolated, I dashed to my window to look outside where the music was coming from. I nearly fainted when I saw what was happening down below. Julie was in my pool along with her kids, strange time for them to still be awake, by the way, plus the friends from earlier, and about 20 other people that she must have dragged along. She was basically throwing a pool party in my pool on my property. I dashed downstairs as fast as I could. "What are you all doing? Get out of my pool right this instant," I demanded, halting the music on their record player. "No, we are here now." "Let us be," Julie yelled back, her words slurring, so I figured alcohol was also involved. "Turn the music back on," someone else called out. "Guys, I'm not going to ask again. Get out of here. Call the police on this creep," another guest spoke up. I watched as someone got on the phone to the police, gobsmacked. How could they possibly think that they were in the right in this moment? I decided to just wait until the cops showed up. I would have needed to phone them anyway. Because of my rather remote location, it took a quick minute for them to arrive, during which time everyone carried on partying like nothing was wrong. So, what seems to be the issue here? Who phoned in? An officer asked once they arrived on the scene. This man is being a total creep. We are trying to have a pool party and he just came out of nowhere. "He is not invited," Julie spoke as she climbed out of the pool. "Sir, this is my house. Honestly, I told them they couldn't use the pool, and here they are throwing a party, and they still won't leave." We all went back and forth for a couple more minutes until I ended up pulling up the CCTV footage on my phone, which showed them asking for permission, me saying no, and then them creeping over with all their stuff at early hours in the morning. "And who is the head of all of this?" the officer asked. Almost everyone pointed to Julie. I pressed charges, of course. Not that I needed to, but I figured it was the punishment she deserved. She ended up having to pay a hefty fine for any damages caused to my property, plus a fine for trespassing. Every other guest at the party also had to pay a smaller fine, which I'm sure will be the cause of the end of the friendship with Julie. To top it all off, Julie was arrested that very night for trespassing and making a false report to the police. Crime never pays off. Trust me, Julie, she will be confined to a very small space for quite a while now. But I'm not sure this entitled Karen really regrets what she did. And the next one is another petty revenge story. It is titled, "He Did What?" So, several years ago, I was waiting in a grocery deli line to pick up some potato wedges for my wife. It was not a long line. I was fourth or fifth in line. And up walks some lady, that's what I'll call her, and what I presume to be her daughter or granddaughter. Anyway, this lady keeps trying to jump the line each time a person was served, and the patient deli worker kept telling her that she needed to wait her turn, with this lady getting more and more frustrated that she couldn't just do what she wanted. The guy before me goes, and I hear her telling her daughter or granddaughter, "This is ridiculous. I just want some wedges." This being petty revenge, we know exactly what I plan to do upon hearing that. So, finally, we get to my turn, and she tries to jump again. Only this time, I pipe up and let her know the end of the line is behind me. She did not like that at all, claiming, "This is BS. It is first come, first serve." The worker and I just stare at her until she walks back to her irritation area off to the side, and I see there are scant few potato wedges available. So, I tell the worker, I will need more than what is available, and he says that they will need to drop some more, about a 5-minute wait. It was longer than that, maybe closer to 10, as it turns out. Knowing what the lady wants and that it's not there, I say he can help her. They go through the same process, which irritates her further, but she says something like, "Fine, might as well at this point," and steps aside in a huff. Then new potato wedges are brought out, and I see her start to move like she's going to jump in front of me again, but I remind her that I am next to order. The deli guy asks how much I want, usually in pounds. And I quietly say I want all of the wedges. "Oh, all of them. All of them." He cracks a bit of a smile and says, "Sure thing," and gathers them up for me. I start to walk away slowly so I can see the aftermath. And surely she shouts, "He did what?" and whips her head around to me. I wish I could say I locked eyes with her and ate a wedge right in her face. But alas, that idea came to me as I recounted the tale to my wife at home. The best $14 I ever spent. And yeah, guys, I will see you again tomorrow. Thank you for watching.